Your average salesperson is closing 3 out of 10 deals, Mo. That's not acceptable. I'm closing 9 out of 10 deals. Why? Process specific. That meeting was qualified. Every action has a reaction. So that's why I love chess. A buddy of mine's daughter was graduating in May. It's $100,000 a year now. That's $500,000. He said, can you help her out with job interviewing? I'm like, brother, you just spent $500,000. Indian, Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, Korean, it doesn't matter, Saudi. They are struggling to get promoted to managerial levels. They have gotten feedback. If they don't contribute in meetings, they're going to lose their job. I can talk to anyone in that segment, and I can assure you I'll be working with them in a week and a half.
Hey, you're watching Future Scale. I'm your host, Mo. Future Scale is featured through Deepline Ops, where we specialize in scaling revenue for companies through information, education, and automation. We'll be showing you guys how real business owners work with growth strategies, from hidden costs of operational bottlenecks all the way to getting an inside look on how these founders are looking at scale today. If you want to take your business to the next level, definitely stick around for some really actionable insights. And if you're interested in using automation and AI for a custom growth trajectory, drop us the word growth in the comments. We'll get back to you with the free integration plan. Today, I'm very excited. We're joined by Joshua Schulman. He is an executive communications coach and the founder and CEO of Schulman Communications Interactive, SCI. He's an award-winning public speaker with 2 decades of experience in coaching professionals, from Shark Tank contestants, that's one of the parts that I saw, all the way to corporate clients like Amazon, Instagram, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch. I could name drop so many more, but his focus is on educating people to pitch, present, and persuade effectively in a multitude of ways. And his offerings span from leadership communications all the way to poker, magic, and he also expands his platforms not just from online video calls, but to virtual reality auditoriums. He's really innovative. Has a hand deeply into his businesses. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you for having me, Mo.
Okay, I'm just going to start us off with the first question, because I went through your background, but one of the things that really stands out from your background is this very interesting bridge, right? And I talked about it, but you have a classically trained performance background in acting, co-founded the American Shakespeare Company, competed in, I believe, I read over 40 Toastmasters speech competitions, and you placed third in 2006. But at the end of it all, you also have been building up SCI, Schulman Communications. Can you walk us through the main pivots in your journey? And also, as a kind of side thing, when you first realized coaching would be the business, what was the first model within there that you actually launched to acquire clients? And also on there, what broke on the way there?
Sure. So there was a lot to unpack there. Let's just piecemeal a few of the different things, because how I really got this started and going was because as a young actor, I was a performer for years, and I just hated that idea of twiddling my thumbs, Mo, and waiting for my agent to call so I get 5 lines on a happy TV show. I joke now, I said I do 10, 12 shows a day, try the veal. I just did a keynote at Disney Hall for 1,000 insurance lawyers. Find me an acting gig that pays that. So I always found it wonderful to work in sales and business while I was pursuing my acting. And I encourage that even to this day. Pitch, present, and persuade, because if you can persuade and convince effectively, you will always be able to provide for yourself, for your families. And so it's so essential that people take ownership of that. And that's why entrepreneurship is so key. And you can't just jump out there and grab a business with a great idea. You've got to be able to tell us what it is and how it works.
Now, I guess when we talk about sales training, because I guess they're related, right? Was that the first model that you launched, or what was the first? I guess what was the first model that you launched that actually
Products I
reliably made
brought
you?
to market. Now, initially, I had a business interesting 25 years ago. I've had a couple different kinds of businesses and things that I've been involved in. I had a business with a unique niche. And this was 25 years ago. I was teaching English in Koreatown. And I started getting a lot of good connections with a lot of my students. Some of them were doctors. And then I found a niche with doctors, particularly Korean doctors, preparing for their residency interviews. And so they were doing very well scholastically, but they were having difficulty with the conversation. So when they were having the residency interview, they weren't doing well. So I said, wait a minute, what if I can hone that? I did the research, found what were the questions, what can they work on and build on that. And before you know it, brother, I was having 2, 3. I was doing 8, 9, 10 doctors a day at $90 an hour. This is 25 years ago. I said, I'm on to something. And so business and English as a second language became a very big part of me teaching communication. Yes, public speaking in general, I was fascinated. I used it myself in sales, right? I don't want to be making 80, 90 dials a day. Put me in front of 500, 1,000 people. People will come up and ask me for my business card. That's effective prospecting. That's solid lead generation. But I noticed people with English as a second language were struggling with this element. And so that became interesting. Then I started working with a company called Berlitz. I had just got married. The idea, I had a summer camp business during the summer. I was doing this during the year with the Korean doctors. And here I'm presented one of the biggest companies in the world called Berlitz. It's a language cultural company, 145 years old, and they're offering me a position to be director of their Torrance corporate center in Los Angeles. Well, I was getting married, right? So salary, health insurance, take me to your leader, as I joke about, very appealing,
Stability.
especially as a young entrepreneur when you got a lot of things going on. There's something about that. Now I'm like, hey, no, let's stop helping Bob build his dreams. Definitely look under the hood, see how people do things, how they do it wrong, how you could do it better. That became the opportunity for me with this circumstance. And I said, I'm
Mhm.
going to work for one of the biggest companies that's language cultural training in the world. And I got to get behind the scenes and see on the analytics, and I'd be able to analyze and build that. And one of the elements I learned and I did well with that I use in my business today, which is why I have so many sessions a week, one-on-one group classes, is what we call classroom utilization. So at that point, I had 6 days a week. Our company business was open. I had 45 teachers. I had 12 classrooms. I had X amount of hours in the day because I had off-site corporate programs, Honda, Toyota, and all these big companies, and Nissan and so forth. And you start figuring out, and you have to be very good at time goal management to manage that. Just like a restaurant has a turnover of a 2 top, 4 top, 2 hours, hour and a half, how many evening slots they have, and then how they can project a business model. And so that became really interesting for me. So what I did is I held off on my business stuff and I started to work for this company full time. And I did that for about 6 years. And that was great because, as I mentioned, I got to travel all over the United States. By the way, I became very much of a utility player to speak at conferences and events and all kinds of stuff. And I became really knowledgeable, the field and all the players in it. And I also had a lot of corporate clientele. So I was developing good relationships. So then later, when the company went through their own struggles of not catching up with 21st century technology,
Mm.
I shifted gears, and the company had also had some challenges. And so there were restructures, acquisitions, layoffs, and I think people should take advantage of that. And so, in honor of that, I put out a shingle immediately for sales training. I didn't focus on language training because I wanted to honor our severance, our package, our kind of
Mhm.
relationship in regards to how it went. Kept great relationship, no burning of bridges. And then, boom, 2 years later, boom, pop back in that implement of the English as a second language. Now, that's a big deal for me because I'm working with people all over the world on 8 time zones. I do over 70 sessions a week.
Yes.
Shared with you, I just got back this past year. I was in Saudi Arabia. I travel extensively. I have people on literally on 8 time zones. I love this. And so that English component is a big deal, even though I work with native speakers, of course, and all ages too, young teenagers, young adults, onboarding, a lot of kids, 23 to 25 are struggling with getting really their bearings in a position, to people in my age. I'm 58, brother, in their 60s who are now esteemed and they're doing really well in their work. But guess what? They're asked to be on a podcast like this and they have to talk for 2 hours. And they're like, Joshua, I never had to explain myself. And so to articulate and to be able to think about their career and what are the anecdotes and stories, and without saying, oh, I'm liking every other sentence, is a thing. So all this became a business model for myself. And I appreciate you mentioned the range. In fact, that's a good book by David Epstein, no relation, but it's called Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, became key to me because I believe there's a lot under my umbrella of pitch, present, and persuade, not just the notion of public speaking and presentation skills, but yes, sales, training, pitch, present, and persuade. Then business English, even native speakers need to build on that skill set, to acting and voice. I have more business people taking my acting classes now, Mo, because you got to pitch 10, 12 times, man. How do you hit that pathos and humor and be consistent and be genuine and be authentic? And then even chess and poker. And yes, those games are, I think there's a direct connection to how we process and when we go, oh my gosh, I didn't see that in speech. We go, I didn't mean to say that. So there was a business there and I knew that. And then when COVID hit, I had already had live and hybrid programs for years. But when COVID hit, I already had hybrid online. I moved everybody online. Even my local Los Angeles, Beverly Hills clients are saying, come to my office. And I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. No, it'll take me an hour to get to you with the 4 or 5 traffic and fires, an hour session, an hour back. I could do 3 groups in that time. So the scale is limited when you have a small coaching practice or a business. Because if you really want to teach, like I do, and I mentioned to you, my name's on my company, it's not an
Yeah.
exit. This is my life's work. And it's been hard for me to scale by hiring trainers who could do all these things, which incidentally, we should all be able to do these three things. This is what education should give you: the ability to present in public speaking in front of groups or not, or even one-on-one, the ability to convince and persuade. So this premise of sales training, whether it's in sales for product or service, but also stakeholders. I work with a lot of engineers and IT folks. They have got to get the buy-in from people so that they can get those projects moving forward. And then the third one is the business English, for whether English is second language or a better command of the language if it is our own native language. And so that became the thing. And so now this has just really blossomed into something very exciting. And I love teaching, and I'm always going to be doing that. And my oldest student, as I joke, is 94. And he said, Joshua, don't you ever retire? I said, don't you worry, Ted. I don't. And I did the math. I joke. I'll do 3 days a week instead of 7. And brother, I'll make more than what my SEP IRA dividends would yield. So the idea people can invest in themselves, invest in focus, find things. We have to be very careful now with AI and what's coming up next. And we don't put all our eggs in one basket, whether it's in how we invest financially or also our time or our career aspirations, and get away from the romance. Being an actor is a beautiful, lovely thing. God bless them. But there's a lot of romance about it. And it's a very hard kind of career to make a living at. Same with being comics. And I coach a lot of comics. I do teach stand-up comedy, acting, voice. And you should know this joke will work. Let's construct it. It won't work with that group of people. It won't work with this group of people at that time, or what have you. Business works that way too. And everything is about time. In fact, most businesses it's about saving time. That's what we're all trying to offer. What is Uber? Every major company you think of. Can you give me the luxury of my time back? Which is ironic because most people are taking that time back that they saved and just doom scroll. Go figure.
Super true. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love the through line of falling into the language as a business model first, and then getting the experience internally in a large company and using that network to shift towards a much larger offering. One that also has a lot of relevance to, again, a large breadth of clients. And in addition, something that can be built around with these other facets that you're talking about, which is the poker and artists, and you work with people in those sectors as well. So I really love that it's all stemming from your passion for teaching. And you touched on something a little after that too, which I really like. Time is of the essence, right? Especially when you have so many clients and you needing to standardize things or put yourself in maybe too many places at once. And I think maybe like a step before we even talk about time saving is like tracking things like where is everything? Where are my clients and what is already happening in my systems? So actually, so before I will touch on the time part as well later, but
Please.
what I want to know is with your really big clients, because smaller clients, it's a little bit easier to track progress. It's one-on-one. Bigger clients, huge teams. I know you've worked with them already before. How do you actually track your client progress across your programs for the huge teams?
Yeah, I love that because there's a good book. I always got a book reference, right? And I tell people,
Yes, you
go
do.
dust off your library card or go on Amazon. You could get a used book now for $5.99. You don't have to spend the $30 on it. But more importantly, go to ChatGPT and say, what are the 5 top takeaways that your coach mentioned? But there's a book by John Doerr called Measure What Matters. And the notion, it's about OKRs and objectives and key results. And just like Peter Drucker often talks about if you can measure something, you can manage it. Even Warren Buffett talks about if you can measure something, you'll understand it. I'll argue if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. But how do we measure something like this that is almost like an observation? You are not an acting teacher, but you could say that is a good actor. That's a bad actor. That's a good performance. That's a great speaker. That's not a good speaker. I'm not a fan of mediocrity. And one thing you'll note, there's no mediocrity in public speaking. So I look at this and I framework, whether it's my 10-week course or I have a 24 track, which is 6 months or even a year. And yes, I have people who've worked with me for years and years because each week I always ask this question: how was your communication week? Meaning what transpired since I saw you last and what's coming up in the next 168 hours. And people at the top of their game, guess what? There's no there. They are always saying, Josh, you know what? I got a meeting next week. I got to let someone go next week. I got a meeting with the board next week. There's always something come up, and this is the place to do it so that they can feel confident about how they're going to communicate those things. Because guess what? If you're an executive or a C-suite, the board of directors presumes you know this already. Your spouses, husbands and wives and kids do not care, and nor are they impressed or want to even hear about it probably. And your employees, again, think you know this stuff and you don't want to show that or convey you're not familiar. So here's a place I'm like the barber or the priest or the rabbi. I know I can work with them and I don't judge that. And we can figure that out so they can be more effective in their weekly. And that's so key as they build on top of those things. But measurement is that interesting thing that I mentioned. It's not a feeling that they can do it and do it again and again. So let's take in sales, we have something called conversion ratio. And break down conversions from the moment you get the lead to a phone call. What percentage chance are you getting that phone call where they'll talk to you, not get a voicemail when nobody's even using voicemail, text? And there's a lot of rhythms because I'm old school, but I'm also new. I'm up to date. I know exactly, and my system and process flow uses a lot of modern tech. But then we have the conversion from that phone call to a meeting. That meeting is our presentation. But it is in that meeting, or in my case, I do a demo. I want to show you what I'm doing. I'll give you a full hour one-on-one private coaching. My colleagues who are coaches think that's a waste of time. They don't understand my business model. My conversions are very high. It's not 3 out of 10. Your average salesperson is closing 3 out of 10 deals, Mo. That's not acceptable. It should not be. But we're wasting a lot of time. I'm closing 9 out of 10 deals. Why? Process specific. That meeting was qualified. I know they're not just like randomly. I'm not grabbing someone off the street and said, have you considered public speaking coach in your life? They reached out to me, specifically knew about me and would like to discuss it. Then I can then relay how that process can work. And then at the end, do you have any questions for me? Any comments, thoughts, or questions? One, they say, how much is it? Which is, guess what? The next slide. So that's why I love chess. Every action has a reaction, right? We can make decisions faster, problem solve better, and mitigate error and mistake. A good lawyer doesn't ask a question in a courtroom they don't know the answer to. Why aren't we anticipating this more effectively? So then from that, I can look at a dashboard, whether on a CRM, right? Salesforce has a lot of really cool stuff. You can navigate this and customize it where I could see, here are my top 10 leads and what percentage chance to close. Find me a salesperson doesn't want to know exactly how much money they're going to make. Maybe they'll be a little bit more diligent in how they actually manage their CRM instead of complaining and whining that their company's making them fill out all this information. It's not information. In fact, most people, it's not very hygienic, right? The integrity of someone's CRM is lousy on most salespeople because they're not diligent and they can't go back. I have a certain station, a workstation with a separate laptop, an environment where I go just for my lead. And I have thousands of people I've talked to and people I didn't close for whatever reason over the years. Maybe they couldn't fit it in financially or this. And I help people navigate that because I know something that they don't even know. That most companies offer tuition reimbursement, Mo. And if I can help them navigate that through HR and training and development, they will be able to pay for my programs because that is the real issue they may have as a consumer. They don't have the money for professional coaching. Oh, but it's ironic, isn't it? They'll have money to go on a cruise or buy a fancy watch or a car. But when it comes to investing in themselves, people won't. Now, I can't help people with their choices or decision making on what is a priority, but we do spend a lot of money for college education. And that's not always clear, that ROI. And I went to USC for college, brother. It's $100,000 a year now. That's $500,000. A buddy of mine's daughter was graduating in May. He said, can you help her out with job interviewing? I'm like, brother, you just spent $500,000 on education. What was that for? So if you are a social worker and you go to USC, which has a great social worker program, God bless them. You're going to come out, you're going to make $58,000 your first year. It's going to take quite a while to be able to pay back that college education. I want ROI. And that is something we can measure. And so when people complain about chasing salary, health insurance, take me to your leader, why do they want that? Because health insurance is so expensive. Now I have to explain this to people around the world. They don't understand in the United States how it works. It's going to get more expensive for people soon. But I'm saying, hold on a second. You build a business, you're making some money, you'll pay for your own darn health insurance. I'm a cancer survivor. I don't mess around. Health insurance is important. You should have it. Because if you don't, you're not going to be getting the best and full treatment that you have and that you need. So these are things I think people should consider. And when they start their own business, you can't nothing sells itself. It drives me nuts, Mo, when people say, oh, yeah, my product sells itself. No, it doesn't. You do it. And part of that will be relationship driven because it is not just what you know. It is who you know and who knows you. My favorite client are our engineers. who complain about sales engineers who are making 3 times that they're making, and they don't even know what they're talking about, Josh. That's what they say. I said, why aren't you doing that job? I'm not a sales guy. I'm not a sales guy? Put the damn cap on. Let me teach you the process, and you can do it, this and this. And you know that material, you're going to crush it. Like when I was an actor, if you could sing, dance, and act, that's called a triple threat. It doesn't guarantee a livelihood or a living as an actor, but it certainly gives you an edge. I want the edge. And my triple threat that people need to have because they're not learning in school is learn how to present effectively and pitch and present, and learn how to persuade effectively. And can you have a better command of the language instead of saying an up talk where everything is a question that you're asking and there's an inflection? We call that question inflection, and no one believes what you say. Those elements, I think, in all that composition is going to give you those metrics you can say that work. So when I'm working with companies, we want to identify that. Now, remember, when I'm working with a company, I'm not working with 15, 20 people from the group of that program. I'm working with head of or training and development or an HR generalist or an HR director. They are the ones we're coordinating this. They are mandated to be in that group. If some one person doesn't show up that week, it's not like a consumer group, then you know what? They missed. You snooze, you lose. If let's say they give me an executive who has a private coaching contract, they leave the company, the individual got the benefit of it or whatever. The remaining sessions we can then allocate to a new client, new employee that they have. And so there's elements, people don't know how to navigate these things. And most people don't take advantage in companies of tuition reimbursement and that allotment. In fact, in the month of November, December, that's the busiest time of the year for me because I could call any random company and say, hey, how you doing, Mr. HR, Mrs. HR, what's going on in your training and development budget? Oh, yeah, we have this and this. And because it doesn't roll over to the next year. People don't take advantage of it. They're not marketing, hey, guys, take advantage of this money that's sitting there. But if Joe Schmo or Sue Schmoo calls them, they will then put that in the system and give them the allocation. They just didn't know. So we don't know what we don't know. In fact, that's how people should approach. Because guess what? No one calls me and says, Joshua, I want chest coaching right off the bat. Yes, there are people who do that. But business people don't. They call me about public speaking or sales or business. And then guess what? Inevitably, I want to take your poker class, Josh. I was invited to a charity benefit. Or you know what? I'd like to learn chess. I did it when I was a kid. Can I do that? Yeah, it's part of your package. Or then, you know what? Adults, they say, Josh, we work with my 8-year-old. My 8-year-old, I love teaching chess to 8-year-olds because it's designed as communication. Because when a kid says, oh, coach, none of my friends know how to play chess. I'm like, really, kiddo? Because I'm going to teach you how to teach them. See, we call that train the trainer in business. By 23, you'll be in management at Deloitte. By 27, you'll have your own company. You don't think when parents are calling me, let's say they did want chess for their kids, they're not going to say, hey, Josh, can I get in on this? Of course they do. And then their wife, and then their 16-year-old son who's struggling with confidence issues, and their 22, 23-year-old daughter struggling with job interviewing. So I've got something for the whole family. That's part of my business model too. One client, 4 or 5 people, member of the family, I sit there at Thanksgiving. So
Wow.
I will never be at a loss of clientele.
Yeah.
And at this point, empty slots filled, new ones come in. That's why they can get longer programs and the price drops down. Obviously, it's a loss for me on that, but it's prepaid. They can get a better rate and more effective and accessible for them. And so there's a myriad of ways that people do it. And when you look at that as a business, it doesn't have to be a huge manufacturing company or a cool app. There's a lot of things that people need to do. And I think people are going to have to start thinking, what can I bring to market? How am I going to provide for my family?
I just love there's so many things, especially when you're talking about education for your clients that, and I say this a lot to my clients as well, that investing in yourself is the best because you are the only asset that you keep for life. And I love that you not only instill that in your clients, but it's very clear you invest in them as well because you see them as assets that can make themselves worth so much more and then their families. And I really like that. And I can definitely tell you probably are not at a loss for clientele because
By the way,
big
with
companies.
founders and startups, if I do a good job, what are they going to do? And call me in 2 months or a year or 2 years? Say, Josh, by the way, would you do us a solid? Can you build and train our sales team? That
Exactly.
happens
So
every
it's,
time. Executives say, Joshua, can I fly you out to ATL or New York or Seattle? Can you do the keynote for us? We had the big kickoff this year. Or can you do a training? I know you have a 2-day boot camp or workshop. Can you do what you were doing with me for private coaching? I want to do that for my
yeah.
team. I got about 25 peeps. It happens all the time. And I never have to sell that. They come up with the idea. I planted the seed, by the way, I do team coaching. But I got to
Very
prove it.
smart.
I want to show them how what I do works and why it's effective. That's why I'm willing to give a demo of my time, because that hour will close, hopefully. And if the reason they can't do it is something I can't accommodate, then it is what it is. But it's not take it or leave it, because
Yeah.
that's not an attitude to have in business.
Yeah. Very true.
Appreciate every client you get for any circumstance. In fact, you have to appreciate and respect every lead you get that has good value.
Yes, 100%. I like that you also talked about getting free value out, acting as a lead magnet for people to see what you're doing, show that value up front, but not being attached to the outcome. I also really, going back to even just talking about the process, you talked about pipeline tracking. And I know that probably looks different from different clients and different teams. And obviously, you're probably keeping those all in line with maybe different softwares. But I guess I want to go a little bit more into the types of clients that you take on, right? Because we're talking about people that are willing to invest themselves, sometimes people that are not willing, maybe some processes that are easy to track, some ones that you can see very clearly, like what the outcome is,
I have a
some
sweet spot,
processes.
if that's what you're asking. There's a
Say it again.
sweet spot.
So I'll say the whole question. If we talk about margin, client retention, operational
Sure.
executability of the client delivery, there's always going to be trade-offs. From a business perspective, which customer segment is your best in terms of keeping SCI sustainable and even growing SCI while balancing all these factors?
Many of them, because I'm working in every sector in various different spaces, but I can always, my bread and butter, which I said I can count on, is an engineer,
Mhm.
48, 49 years old, with English as a second language. Indian, Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, Korean, it doesn't matter, Saudi. They are struggling to get promoted to managerial levels. They have gotten feedback. I know this for a fact, that if they don't contribute in meetings, they're going to lose their job, let alone get promoted to managerial. Because if when you are in leadership, you have to present this and simplify it. I'm not talking about dumb it down, but you got to simplify it to C-suite, and they do not have the technical knowledge and understanding of what you're speaking. So you've got to be more effective, and that is hard for them. Again, they know what to say. They don't know how to say it. I can talk to anyone in that segment, and I can assure you I'll be working with them in a week and a half. They know,
Oh,
look, there's this idea we don't know what we don't know. A smart person, not a fool, knows what they don't know that they should know.
definitely,
And yet
definitely.
this is not something available. You can't find it even in, I mentioned in college, they're not teaching this properly. They have a speech class now. And yes, I get students from Yale, and they're like, I want to take your public speaking class. I'm taking a course at college. I said, wait a minute, you're taking a public speaking course at Yale, and you want to take my course while you take it? Yeah, there's 90 people in there. So they want, it's not that effective a class, and they want to compliment that because probably there's a pretty girl in the class or a handsome dude and they want to impress them or whatever. There's a myriad of reasons why they want to cultivate that. And that's why I want to work with everybody in all age groups, especially kids, teens, young adults. I only have a certain amount of those that'll work. Of course, C-suite. I don't want to work just with C-suite. Because you know what? I want to work with people who are building stuff and creating stuff. And I desperately know that there are people who are struggling with this and they don't have this. And after COVID, there are many people who were impacted by that period where they lost their confidence and their ability to speak or have
Mm.
had experience getting up in front of people. Had a client recently. This is interesting. He was telling me they were at Top Golf, one of those bar golf course things. And the founder, the CEO guy, was talking and schmoozing with the new customers. And then the CTO got up there to hit some balls. And one of the client prospects asked him a question. And he said, oh, I don't know. That's not my wheelhouse. Talk to Eric. And the guy said, oh, no, I actually I want to hear it from you. And that guy had a responsibility to sell the product and what's going on with the service and not just go, oh no, let's go get daddy. Let's go get the sales guy, the face of the, remember back in the day, there were a lot of businesses. There was a face man and there was like Steve Jobs and a Woz, right? There was always like one at the Google, but there was always a myriad of people where there's one person who is the face of the company and then the other person who's the back end analytic person who could break it down. Everybody needs to step up. All hands, right? All hands
Yeah.
on deck.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's very relevant now with the advent of all automation and AI because a lot of this extra menial task workload is now able to be offloaded. So now the one of the biggest facets of humanity that still is marketable is our communication, our human interaction, relationships. Like that is actually more important now. And I also want to touch on something else to kind of segue into my next question, which is education
Hmm.
in a personal sense, right? As opposed to college. I really love that you talked about that because I'm also of the belief that people are very quick to invest in college, but the outcomes of that, the ROI, is not immediate. And oftentimes it never gets really taken back. It never really gets to that 100%. But when people talk about business coaching, like the ones that you offer, there is so much more ROI within a smaller time frame that, especially now, maybe after COVID, but I definitely in the last couple of years, online education, coaching, courses too, maybe like smaller, lower quality, just like filmings of classes, but then also higher level mentorships, one-on-one coaching. It's getting so big now. So now my question to you is this. We've spoken about you teaching over 60 hours a week. And with the increase in people wanting that personal education, it's not the typical founder scaling playbook to handle everything yourself, which I know you're very proud of doing. And I commend you for that because you're juggling 20 responsibilities at once. When you love it, I know we talked about your ikigai, right? And
Explain that to the audience.
yes, yeah, I was actually going to have you explain the
Oh,
audio, but
okay. But
you can go for it.
sometimes in conversations, people mention something and they don't explain, and then they're lost, like looking it up while we are talking about the next thing. It's basically, it's Japanese. It means reason for being, right? It's four parts like a Venn diagram. You take something you love to do that you're good at. Does the world need it? Can you get paid for it? Because if you can converge that, that's bliss. I've been doing that for years. That's really what I'm teaching. Right. But I'm
Yeah,
not a life coach. I don't market it that way. I know that people find there's value with those transitions in life and careers. Fine. But I'm focusing on the skill set. This is not a natural ability or a talent. So
yes.
those things become key with that. But it's not also about content and information, which is why, by the way, in what you were just saying, I don't do a YouTube channel or just make video classes that you do
Yeah.
online for self-learning. You're not learning. That's a money grab. It's not true. But I do need to teach one-on-one. I do need you to get up and stand up and back up. And I sit down, take detailed notes, give you feedback. And we use AI for companion notes, for copious notes. We
Mhm.
record the sessions. And yes, week to week, it doesn't take more than 3 sessions where people say, you know what? I got a process now. Yes, you have a process of communication that you can take to the bank and you can do and do it again. And anybody can do that because this is not about personality. This is not some, as I mentioned, affinity or talent. That's why I like working with a lot of Asian clientele, whether
Mhm.
my Chinese or Indian, because you may be familiar in that culture, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. In
Very
North
true.
America, the nail that sticks up gets opportunity, advancement, promotion, recognition, reward. I
100%.
share that metaphor. I've used it a lot because it makes sense. And people go, oh, I thought I was introverted or shy. No, you're not. Your culture says be more humble. But American culture, that's why entrepreneurism flourishes here in the United States, because we're brash and we put ourselves out there. Can we do it with maybe more assertiveness and not arrogance? Of course. That would be better. But people have got to take the reins of their life and their career and their products if they're going to bring them to market. Because you don't have time, as my father would say, Mo, you can't fiddle fart around.
I love that. I love that. I especially love that you're talking about this growth, not just for business, but like even culturally, because I think people from the Eastern culture come into America and I think they also expand their worldview and their confidence just by effect of integrating into this type of scene, right? And I do agree with you. I think it's a very important skill. We're on the same page of that 100%. But I want to ask you is as this grows, because I know that it's growing, how are you thinking differently about your role as SCI grows? And more specifically, what are you willing with all the passion that you have and the very clear quality standards that you have? What are you willing to even offload as you move forward?
That's interesting. I just did a podcast on that about delegation and how we
Mhm.
do and what we can, because there are people who could do things better than me, Mo. I should be
Yeah.
delegating a
Yes.
lot. I have accountants, I have lawyers, I have different people. I do my own marketing. I do my own, a lot of things. I actually do my own bookkeeping. I know where things are. We'll never
Mhm.
be caught in a concern that there's some sort of people taking advantage of me financially. When I heard about someone recently say, I never paid attention to the money. How can you run a business and not know what you're earning? You can't be focused on that. Like my mom would say, don't just feed your wallet, feed your soul. True. I think so. On my P&L, I have something. It says it's a JF percentage. And my accountant, my lawyer always asks me, what the heck is this thing? What are you talking about? It's not for you. It's for me. It's joy factor. Because if that percentage
Mm.
drops, even as a metric, I'm not doing this anymore. So I've got to scale and build. So I'm doing a lot of work, yes, within VR and AI and how we can manage, be able to do effective, interesting programming that's using new modalities that still have efficacy when teaching, that they can build on that. I'm only one person. I can only do many. You mentioned 60. I'm doing 60, 70 a week. Hold on a second, brother. Those are slots. That's not people. Because with groups, we're talking easily over 100, 120 people a week that I'm interacting. And I know who every single person is. Every month, at the beginning of the month, I have a huge calendar board up there. Right there, I'm looking at it. It has the month, the year. On the bottom, it says goal and a number. And let me tell you something. For 9 years now, I've been proud of this. I have hit month over month, year over year, because below the word goal says the word actual. And on the 30th, 31st of the month, I'm going to write down what is that number, and I'm going to hit it. I'm going to hit it because of consistency. I know what I need to do. I know when I got to push on the accelerator. I know when I need to pull back when I've hit that, and be also content. I think satiety is a thing, right? Being satiated. You drink, right? When we were 12 years old, we went to 7-Eleven to play video games and get our Funyuns and Big Gulp. You had 2 sips, you were no longer thirsty. What the hell are we doing with this 72-ounce, right? Slurpee. Okay, so same with that. You know what? Businesses build, and you can get very successful with it. But at one point, is your goal to be a billionaire? If you want the 3 commas, there's another element you got to do. You're going to have to delegate a lot of people. In fact, even at the multi-million-dollar status, you have to. And I'm looking now, I'm building a team for some other things that we will make anew. I'm not even on TikTok. I'm on all kinds of TikTok. I'm on all kinds of different social media and stuff, but we're creating a channel for that. And I need an editing team, and I need producers, and I need stuff. And we're going to be creating. I don't want to do a podcast. People say, you should create a podcast. No, people like yourself, you guys can do it better than me. I'll let you do the heavy lifting, though. And I do a podcast that drops pretty much anywhere in the world every 2 weeks. So you guys create that, market it, put it out there. Typically 15, 20 people reach out to me and say, I saw your podcast. Can we talk? So it is marketing, and it has intrinsic value than me just spending because that's a different business model, isn't it? If I'm creating a YouTube channel or that's another revenue stream. It's a different format of that. I have multiple revenue streams. I can do workshops, seminars, live scenarios, keynotes. Plus, I do my bread and butter. I do this all day, every day, Mo, right? I'm not waiting. And if someone calls me, can you come in on Thursday? I got this speech, flying to Vegas. I'm good to go. I'm ready, because this is not a natural thing. And this is not like riding a bicycle. If you don't do it regularly, you're going to lose your mojo. I don't care who you are. I work with a lot of TED talkers and all these kinds of folks, celebrities at the highest level. And if they haven't been speaking within the last 6 months, they are nervous wrecks.
I definitely agree. Keeping the gears greased, basically, when it comes to being in your business, when it comes to communication and talking to people, even within a day, talking at the beginning of the day, that actually helps the rest of the day.
Local exercises in the morning, actually preparing for my day. I have a whole process flow in the morning, and it's like a studio here, and there's not even a lot of people. I'm going, all right, places, like I'm going on camera in 5, 4. My first client, they get a certain element of energy. By the way, I maintain it all day long. I've had 7 sessions today on a Sunday since 7:20 this morning. By the time you and I are meeting now, and I'm still in gear. And then we got some family plans later on in the evening. I got to figure it out.
Yeah. So on this question, so I'll dig a little deeper here, because it's very clear growth of your clientele may also not be your biggest goal, in terms of, because you have a lot of different revenue streams and you're not looking to necessarily add so much that you can't handle it. So knowing that you're in excess right now, back to the same question, what part of the actual pipeline, let's talk actually like client delivery, whether it's for bigger clients, teams, or smaller clients, what are you looking to, I know you talked about hiring teams. What are you looking to offload to those teams? I know you're also using automation and AI. What are you looking to offload onto there? I'm kind of just looking like, where do you see yourself and where do you not see yourself as we continue to
the automated of teams and stuff, even like little things. It takes me 4 minutes and 26 seconds to send my reminders for my clientele for the next day. Now you'll say, why don't you just do that automated, Josh? And I could with AI, and there's a myriad of different systems and platforms. I can, because I want to know who I'm working with the next day. And if someone texts me back immediately and says, Coach, I can't make it. You had a slot on 10 o'clock on Friday. Is that still open? I want to make that determination. I don't want AI or anyone else making a determination, because they may not know what's in my head, that I had an errand to do on Friday that I was planning on running. So there are sequences where I want to be able to do that. Also, it keeps me fluid. I know who everybody is, brother, and who I'm working with. And so it does have an added valve for me to be hands in and involved with what's going on by just sending a text that looks automated, by the way. It's a boilerplate from the previous meeting. I just send it again, and I can do it fast. And it says in there, this is not an automated text. And I've trained my clients and the people I work with, they know in that expectation. That's why I don't have a cancellation policy, brother. Most of my colleagues rather, in coaching have a 24-hour or a 48-hour cancellation policy. I do not. And they go, how do you manage that? I say, because I work with some of the busiest people on the planet, and that's just the 8-year-olds. But it's interesting when they can't make it, I move them to another day that week or at the end of the rotation. I got that huge board. By the way, all of that is electronic too. So my nephews are funny. They're like, "Oh, coach, your dad, Uncle Josh, you're old school." I got it. I can see it. I can dry erase, move it around. I got a legend system that I've created, right? A green dot next to someone's name. That means, guess what? My client couldn't make it that week. I could put that person in. If it's a green with a black dot in the middle, that means I could sell that slot. If it's red, that's personal. If it's blue, it's a meeting or a podcast or something that's business development. I have a whole process, so it's always running on that. Once or twice, sometimes 3 times even a month, I'll make sure to go to actual events where I go speak at events or mixer events. I want to make sure that I'm really meeting real people within organizations, all kinds. I'm on boards of different events. I go attend different events. Nothing is too big or small. I need to be out there because I know when I go, I'm going to meet 50, 60 people, brother. Come back with those cards. We'll connect on LinkedIn by the end of that evening. And those people are prospect maybe in the next month or 2 months. So I'm always got a very good, very plentiful lead generation for at least a full quarter behind me. I will never wonder what's going to happen next month.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very clear that all of these different parts of the process, it can only really be done by you.
Well, now, what can you ask about what I can delegate? Okay.
Or I guess more clearly, what part shouldn't be you anymore from your thoughts?
I'd like to learn about editing and do all of those things. I do a lot of the marketing and I create some of the stuff, but I should probably delegate that off to somebody. And it's not like I don't want to spend the money on it. It's just, I'm also looking at ROI for various different things. And there's a lot of people who happen to be in the space of editing who are a small business themselves and they're not really sure of their formats or what they're doing. And I don't know if they're pricing accurately or what they're doing. In fact, I can often work with them to help them figure out how they can do that a little bit better to be more consistent. But listen, brother, if someone writes me a glowing review, God bless you. I have my own website. I did delegate that. The recent one, or the last 2 years, was built, but now I have total control over it. I don't pay monthly for it. And so if someone writes me a glowing review, it is on my website today. If I'm working with a company, I would have to delegate it, and they have 25 clients maybe, and they will get to it when they get to it. But if I work with a lot of law firms, and if I've got a law firm that I'm meeting this afternoon, and I have a client who wrote me a nice review, who's a big shot lawyer, guess what? I would like that primo on my website for review, so they see that. They don't know that. They don't care about that. I do. And so the ins and outs of knowing and understanding your business, your work is it's a lifestyle. It is important. It is a part of these things that you do. This is not for giggles, right? It's not a hobby. And if people want to do hobbies, bless them. But if they're running a business, they've got to manage. And if they got family and all these other things too that they have to manage, then you got to be better at it because everybody deserves their time and their focus. But businesses do too. And that's why, quite frankly, the divorce rate is really high for entrepreneurs.
Wow. I actually didn't know that metric. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Too high. I don't have the exact metric, which I would like to source actually if I reference it, but it is unbelievable. And I was a young entrepreneur and I went through that myself, so I can appreciate it.
I see. Thank you for sharing that. I know that commitment to really building out a business and being a part of it and not necessarily offloading things because it's easy, but being so in it that you know which parts to offload is really important. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of
Trust.
trust.
Build trust with an employee or people. When our companies, when people are employees, I've talked about this, they typically get hourly rate or salary. They don't have equity in your company, Mo. They're not going to work the way you do. They don't think the way you do about the business prosperity or its health
100%.
or everything. My most important clients are the ones I have because I have clients I've had for years. I have clients who are in their 30s now, and guess who I work with? They're 7, 8-year-old kids who were teenagers when I worked with them.
Wow. You have such a clear path to continuance for your business. And because of how much you have your hands and again, the parts of the business, but also the networking that you've done. So I guess for my mm, second to last question, actually,
Sweet.
short to midterm,
Yeah.
the name of the podcast is called Future Scale. What does future scaling actually look like for SCI? Where I know growing your clientele is one thing a lot of businesses say, but it doesn't seem like that's the main thing. But there's also growing your offerings, standardizing operations, doubling down on technology.
Yeah, I want to scale. I am double downing on technology, and I do want what I'd like to have is more consumer groups. I'd like to have, and this has always been my framework, where I have a morning, early morning, or an afternoon and an evening covering all the time zones I work on of consumer groups, maybe 15, 20 people, where I can make it a little bit more accessible and affordable for them, and they can come in there. That by itself, I do 15 a week. That's 3 a day, is a chunk of change. It's a very effective and healthy business. Now, I have corporate groups and I have all that kind of stuff, which is
Mhm.
easy because I just work with one person. So I'm going to tell you something. I gotten a little complacent because I can just deal with individuals or consumers from one-on-one within certain price points. And then, of course, I have the group classes, and then I have other streams, and I do trainings online, and I do live and things like that. But I know because pre-COVID, I used to do a lot of groups, especially for realtors with English as a second language.
Mhm.
Presentation skills for realtors with English as a second language. I crushed it, particularly in Chinese business communities, because they don't want to admit their English isn't where it needs to be. And they need to sell outside their affinity group, because if you only sell to the people you know, you'll be gone. Literally, in 4 months, you can't sustain a business. Stop calling friends, cousins, and family. Leave them alone. I'm a Jewish kid from Hollywood, man. If I only sell to people within my community, I'd be gone fast. I go
Mhm.
speak at events at NAREP all the time, the North America Hispanic Real Estate Association. I go and I was on the board with ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America. There's a myriad of different things. And they tease me and joke, and they're like, Joshua, they don't mean it racist, but they say, you're the only Caucasian who ever comes to these things. I'm like, why aren't you going to other events? Why aren't you selling outside of to build a solid book of business? And I'm proud of that, working with people from all over the world. I was just in Saudi Arabia this past year. That's a very strange and interesting thing by the way, I was speaking at the LEAP conference. 215,000 people were at that conference. I was the only American as far as the eye could see. I never met anybody who was from North America, and I was definitely the only Jew. And some of my closest friends are Saudi and UAE and Egyptian, and that became an absolute honor for me, for them to really know someone who was Jewish. Our peoples we're going through a hard time right now with a lot of things that are going on, and we
Yeah,
have for
100%.
centuries, quite frankly. So it's not
Yeah.
new for us, but it is heartbreaking. And many cultures and many communities have gone through that. Just like my friends who are Sikh and Indian went through nonsense after 9/11 on how they were treated, or my Chinese clients and friends have been treated really badly within the period after COVID. And so we
Exactly.
are one big world, and we need and should be working together closely, better, more effectively, more efficiently. Technology enables that. And so some of those things I could delegate to when we expand, and the consumer groups is one area which I will build, not just short term. Yeah, within the next quarter or two, I'm going to have major strides with that. I already have in process, which I'm excited about, because I do want to work with a consumer. A consumer has a job, but it may be a small business and they don't get tuition reimbursement, or it could be just someone who has dreams of it one day. The
Mhm.
company's corporate, all that, I love that, and that's good bread and butter. But I want to work with everybody, because nobody has access to professional coaching, brother. Affordable, accessible coaching. It's just not there. And so I try find ways to do that without devaluing what I do for a living.
I love that. I love that. You're really just talking about expanding to global markets in a way that allows your personality and the very valuable information you have to be put into front of people that you can make a huge impact on, not just a corporate client impact, but someone's life could really change and turn around. And I really love that.
Ask you a question just real quick on that, because this is
Please,
interesting. If
yeah.
you have an idea or suggestion, because I look at my business, you've had a chance to peruse my website. I teach
Yeah.
over 200 modules of communication. I could tomorrow set up a business model, hire 500 trainers for public speaking, all right, under the SCI banner, 500 speech coaches, acting coaches, business English teachers, stand up teachers, right? Chess, poker. I'd be in an ivory tower. I'd have a team of maybe 150, 200 people. We can get this going. Boom. That is a huge scale business. Create
Yeah.
that online, the AI elements that I'm doing with VR, where I have a classroom. I already have, right? An auditorium I mentioned too. We have 3 floors, and you can, and this will be within the next year or two. I anticipate you could say, I want to sit in row J, row J, seat 6, pay $25 for that time and goal management program he does. It's me as AI speaking, presenting. You can do Q&A. I won't even be there. So we do have ways that we're scaling and building on top of that stuff, which is very exciting. And we'll see some of those things where we go. But you you don't get benefit of this stuff unless you play in there. A lot of people I know have never even used VR. I use VR in my personal life. I do boxing in there every other day. That's my workout, brother. I'm burning 300 calories in 30 minutes. So,
Wow.
and I'm a big proponent of VR, but I've been on it from the beginning. This is the original Oculus from 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, it
To
is.
every iteration, to knowing and understanding the market with what Zuck is doing. He spent billions of dollars. They're still in beta with a lot of this stuff. And he knows, and he's had to do some offshoots. He's had to do some layoffs. But he knows VR, that's what the meta glass is, the form functional change. I'm ready for this. And because there's no other coaches are doing this, I know engineers and people who can help me with the back end analytic. I am not just a content creator. This is good stuff and material that they can use. So I could be able to then create that AI and it'll look, it won't even look like cartoony in the next few years. It's going to be very lifelike, realistic avatars of us coaching. And so I'm excited about that. There's some long term there that we're looking at and the short term. I don't know how long I got on this planet, brother, but I promise you, when we're invoking it, we're doing that, we're going to feel a sense of purpose. Ben Franklin's one of my favorite guys, and I went to school with him. No, I'm kidding. He did this thing called schema, and every morning he would write down, what good shall I do today? And at the end of the day, he said, what good have I done today? If people create that notion of purpose and really focus on what did you accomplish and what are you going to do the next day, you're going to be really energized. You know what? When I'm on camera all day, every day, 7 days a week. I'm getting a little break. I'm going to take 3 weeks off for the holidays here, brother. Go see my mama in Texas. Can't wait and see family. Every 6 weeks, I take a couple weeks off. I get my resets. I meditate every day, every afternoon at 3:45. I have a 5-minute one that boom resets. If you know me a little bit, I have to unplug. So if we can figure out and incorporate that, we're going to run like crazy. Right? It doesn't mean we have to sleep 4 hours a night because that's not functionable. You're basically drunk. So we got to get good rest. And I talk about these things a lot, right? Hydration, exercise, nutrition, sleep, meditation. I call it Hens Plus. I do a whole program on that. And just at 58, how I do this all day, every day. People want to know. I'm not special. I have notes. I'm not smart. I'm not that talented. I'm uber friggin' diligent and I have process flow to do it. And I can teach that and anybody can incorporate that. And I think people just need to relinquish that and stop saying that's just not me. That guy's got great personality. The personality doesn't sell anything. Handsome, pretty, that doesn't sell anything. But the ability to do it and do it every day consistently over and over again will. And so you're right. And I want to learn on that too and from my own business. How can I and who could I delegate certain things more effectively to build it into what I really like to create that has significance? And depending on what those things might mean of what you want to accomplish. When you work with partners, people get more conscious about the money and it is about what their build is and rev. Fair. I'm not thinking of it the same way. It's not it is a luxury because if I focus only on how much money I'm going to make, I don't think people would appreciate then the offer.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. I think like your vision for the future is a lot less about just expansion on the revenue side, but more so putting yourself in front of the right people, more people, and leveraging technology to offer something that many others really cannot. And I also really love that piece of inspiration that you dropped here, which is that anybody can do it if you do it every day. And tracking that everyday action is really what creates goals to get closer and closer over months and years.
What are your
And
wins? What are your wins? When you have them, why did you win? So you can be consistent and replicate that. And if you're having falters and you're stepping back, what happened? You could usually see it. You can identify what it is. If it's a person, then you got to reassess the working arrangement, right? If it's a time sequence and you're working too late, maybe you're not on your game.
That's very true. Like making good use of time. It's you can do something in an hour if you give yourself only an hour to do it. Usually, a lot of people have said like, if you give yourself an hour, you're gonna get it done.
An hour is a lot of time.
Yeah,
You could do
100%.
a tremendous amount of things, and we have so much that wastes our time. And I'm not just talking about doom scrolling. I love the phone. The smartphone is a real thing. It's a smartphone. I have an app I talk about a lot. I'm not selling it or anything, but It's called YUNO, and it's about education. It's got everything from geography and history and music and literature. And you have little quizzes. And when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm listening to a 9-minute lecture, and then I'm doing a quiz and I'm following up. And weeks go by, Mo, and then you have a quiz about what you learned a few weeks past. And I've done it 328 days in a row. And if you miss a day, you have to go back. And it's really cool. I've been consistent. And as a result, I've learned a lot about things that I thought I knew about regarding history. And when you're a kid, you learn stuff. It goes through one ear out the other. My girlfriend and I last night went to go see the Nutcracker, Tchaikovsky, and I was giving her all the details and the backstory about the Nutcracker and what Tchaikovsky was doing with it and what he was creating, what the story symbolized, and which each dancer represents, and what the dream sequence. And she's like, "What?" And it was because of that silly thing. And then, of course, I did my own deep dive on certain things so that I can know more about it and understand and appreciate those things. So we got to do that with the spaces in our world today. We desperately need to do that with AI. We desperately also need to do it with the different kinds of AI.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
Those top engineers are getting paid very well.
Yes.
People wise up, because things are going to be shifting real fast, real soon, about a lot of companies that we thought were here for a long haul, and they're not. We need to be versed in what's happening around us in business, because even in our small business, it's a microcosm, but it is important because we can run efficiently too if we're just doing an eighth of what they're doing.
Yes. I really like that you brought that up because with AI, not just the chatbots, but we can even talk about no code tools. We can just talk about the ability for the average person to get to a baseline where they can, like what you said, bring even an idea straight up into impact within less than a year, receive a demo, push it out to investors, and actually be able to build this up from the ground up with like an eighth of the time. AI is changing every industry, and I don't doubt in the next 5 or 10 years, every industry will have to use it just to stay competitive, really, in what you said. And okay, so we're talking about a lot of the things in terms of like future of business. You've had a whole bunch of history with entrepreneurship, with growth. And so now let's take it back to my last question to you, and it's really just based off your story. What is a piece of entrepreneurship advice that you hear often that you heavily disagree with? And how did or has that advice hurt you or your clients along their journeys?
I've heard people talk about passion, just love what you do. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be pragmatic. People think
Mhm.
I'm a little weird with sometimes the chess and poker. They don't get it until they talk to me and they understand the association with those things. But I do love that. I want to teach chess every day. I want an hour with a child to teach chess in the middle of the day, because it just breaks up my day. It separates stuff. It bifurcates things, and it helps me look at the world differently. And I want to make faster, as I mentioned, decisions and problem solve better. And so when people say, you get just to do what you love, it's not as simple as that. Because if I couldn't garner revenue from these various different ideas that I had, then I won't do that, because I still have responsibilities in my own life. So just do what you love by itself is not enough. As I mentioned, and I joke, my mother says, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I'm like, okay, mama, that was Confucius. Nice try. But the premise of sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, feed your, not just to feed your wallet, feed your soul. There is some sort of generation or a generator that drives you. And I love cars. What's the rattle and hum? But you have to do the homework. You got to see what is actually. So just being passionate by itself is not it, because it's not, that is luxury. Because there's a
Mhm.
lot of products and services out there in the marketplace right now, Mo, that are ridiculous, that are not going to serve anyone. Maybe ego, maybe this, maybe that, but they're not going to be lucrative.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the distinction there, correct me if I'm wrong, is go to market for these kind of smaller ideas or passions versus actually seeing what works for you and for the people that you're serving, and then basing the value that you give and the offers that you give around that. Is that kind of where you're going for?
Yeah, and you'll know when you get there, because first of all, you'll see it because the remuneration, but you're going to also feel it, because you're going to say, "Hey, look, this is really satisfying." And if I ever felt blue, I just go back and read my reviews on my website, and I'm really
Mhm.
appreciative of what people have written in great detail. And if I've ever felt a client wrote something that was AI, I'm like, please find your own words, something, because people reach out to me all the time, even on social media and on LinkedIn. And I know that was all crafted and written by AI, and I don't know who I'm talking to. So things like that are key. You mentioned about what are some of the things going on. I think people are relying too much sometimes on AI as well. and that can be problematic. There's a lot of old school concepts. Dale Carnegie wrote a book about how to win friends and influence people. That was the name. It's a little wonky title from 1936, but there's still premise on it that's still valuable today. In fact, even 15 years ago, he came out with the title, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age, because things have changed, right? What was it? Nick Shallows has a book called it's called The Shallows. What was it? Nicholas Carr, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. Like, we should understand that because that's our customer.
Yeah.
That's whatever, our client, our patient, or what have you. As a cancer survivor, I can appreciate that, because even now people in healthcare are always looking up stuff and they think they're Mr. Doctor themselves and they don't quite understand. But doctors can use some more, what do we call, bedside manner. So when they told me I had cancer, I said, Doc, you may tell people they have cancer all day, every day. I'm not told I have cancer all day, every day. And this guy in his 50s had to revisit about how he's actually going to tell people that, because he realized that maybe that was not really empathetic or compassionate. Can't do that all day long when some of your patients are dying. I get that. I get it.
But you're talking also about your listening to the signals around you and being able to be flexible and pivoting around that. Again, just for the doctor that you're talking about and for people in the new age, and not to necessarily offload even the looking of those signals or acting on it, but like really being aware, present, consistent, and being open to feedback and putting your effort in there, especially in the digital age, especially in the age of AI. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Josh. This has been a great talk. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we went a lot over, but this conversation was amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's wonderful to meet you and talk to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching Future Scale. Come back for the next episode. Bye bye.